Back in the 1970s, you could get designer editions for luxury cars. Welcome everyone to episode 38 of the Automotive History series, tailor-made for my Gucci gang out there. Yes, that's right, I'm back at it again with another garish 70s theme for you. The episode about the Gaudy designer editions on American luxury cars of the 70s. To start things off, this episode is somewhat of a follow-up of the previous episode about the luxury trim options on American passenger cars, and here is a very quick recap to refresh your memory. American car companies want to sell cars with low production cost and a nice profit margin. Today these are pickup trucks and SUVs, but back in the 60s it were the performance versions of regular production cars. But since everyone was doing it, it wasn't all that attractive anymore. And so, by the late 60s and the 1970s, American car makers pulled the same trick by offering higher-priced luxury editions on the lower-cost cars. Packages that include meaningless badging, vinyl tops, opera windows, waterfall grills, and wood grain interior. It was in tune with the times. But here we are around the mid-70s, and as stated before, the deluxe or Brougham package reached an all-time high and was virtually everywhere. American car companies were back to square one. Everyone had access to what was supposed to be the exclusive Brougham package, and companies sought new ways to milk the last penny out of the consumers' pockets. What if you go one step further? What if you could personalize your car even more, beyond what was currently on offer, to get an even more limited edition on your luxury edition? A trim version of a trim version. Oddly enough, it wasn't the American luxury car makers like Cadillac or Lincoln that started to offer designer series on their top-of-the-range models, but the American Motors Corporation, or AMC. AMC was always the odd one out. You had the big three of America, and then you had AMC. AMC never really was competitive in the full-size car field, and instead focused on other cars, namely the more mid-sized and compact car models, focusing on a smaller but largely ignored car buying demographic. And that was part of AMC's ethos, known as philosophy of difference, selling cars by not following the trend. Despite all this, it was still a struggle for the company to remain relevant. In order to offer something that the big three did not offer and stay relevant, employees were given the corporate freedom and encouragement to come up with new and creative ideas. Some way, somehow, one of the designers got in touch with the Italian fashion expert Aldo Gucci. For the ones that have been living under a rock, Gucci is an Italian high-end luxury fashion house based in Florence and founded in 1921 by Guccio Gucci, and Aldo was his son. Gucci is famous for its double G logo and typical choice of colors. Now, what moved the Italian designer to apply my name to some car company from America, I have no clue, but the deal was made, and before you know it, you could buy a 1972 AMC Hornet Sportabout station wagon with the Gucci designed interior. The interior featured light beige seating surfaces overlaid with Gucci's trademark red and green stripes, with green bolsters. Gucci's distinctive three-stripe design was used on the door panels as well. The headliner was grey cloth imprinted with Gucci's GG logos, and a badge bearing the Gucci family crest was applied to the front fender. The car was an unexpected instant success. The amount of sales, about 2,500, exceeded the modest projections AMC had, partly because the car with the Gucci package was targeted to fashion-conscious women. You could get a massive and dull Buick Estate wagon, or this, the small, sporty, nimble Sportabout wagon with a designer's touch. A handbag on wheels. AMC saw that they struck gold with the so-called designer's package, and off they went to create more packages. Another head of the design department was sent out to Paris to pay a visit to the French designer Pierre Cardin, maker of perfume, jewelry and fashion. They also made a deal, and Cardin's signature design was carried out on AMC's Javelin model. It pretty much follows the same recipe as the Gucci package. An interior with seats designed by Cardin, along with a redesigned door panel and some extra badging on the outside. But The interior design is by many regarded as one, if not the most outlandish of the 1970s and the most daring of interiors. So now AMC had a designer edition for the Hornet and the Javelin. Let's apply this trick to all our models. Next up is the Gremlin, and in the exact same way AMC struck a deal with Levi's, makers of renowned jeans, for a more all-American approach. Now, the initial goal was to make the seats out of the very same denim cloth as the jeans, but it was not possible because of some serious fire hazards. Luckily, the designer team found a lookalike fabric that would be close enough to the real deal. The Levi's package was released for the Gremlin model, and it's rumored that the #1 buyer was Jay Leno.
It's a lean, mean jean machine.
Kidding, of course. Later on, the package was also available on the Hornet hatchback and even the Jeep CJ. Next up was the AMC Matador, and this time the design department turned to Oleg Cassini. The half-Russian, half-Italian designer came to America as a young man and became famous for his designs for film stars. Cassini had some outlandish ideas about interior colors that would surpass the already colorful Cardin edition, but it was eventually toned down a bit. What was new, however, was that the Cassini package went one step further. Whereas other designer series only changed the interior with some extra badging, the Cassini package came in 3 distinct exterior color combinations: white, copper, and black. The last car in AMC's lineup that couldn't be left behind was the grand flagship, the Ambassador. Now, the design department had some talks with the well-known American designer Bill Blass during a lengthy lunch, but Blass was stubborn and overambitious. He wanted to change the whole car, not only the interior, but there was not enough time and money to do that, and the negotiations stalled. But the Blass name will return later in this video. Trust me. The AMC designer series were quite the hit, but they were short-lived. After just a couple years, in 1975, AMC decided to drop all the popular designer series for reasons unknown. But after all, at least AMC had something the other big car companies didn't have. And this had to change. Luxury car maker Lincoln was on a roll in the mid-70s. The company offered the right cars at the right time, namely the long hood waterfall grille Continental Mark IV. Even despite getting 8 miles a gallon in gas crisis days, it sold like crazy. Your own personal, soft, isolated cocoon with a dash of style. But Lincoln wanted to keep the success of the 5,000-pound disco-mobile going, but how would they do that? What would keep buyers interested when they wanted to trade in their Mark IIIs and get a Mark IV? Lincoln looked over AMC's shoulder, and the limited run designer series might do the trick. And it did. As soon as AMC had decided to drop their designer series in 1975, a year later Lincoln released several designer packages for the then aging Continental Mark IV personal luxury coupe, just to squeeze the last drop of popularity out of it before being replaced by the Mark V. Funnily enough, these designers were not the designers as hired by AMC. Makes you wonder. Lincoln had found another 4 make-believers that were interested in applying their name and fame to gas-guzzling land yachts. These designers were Cartier, the watchmaker, Givenchy, the fashion designer, Pucci, the fashion designer, and there he is again, Bill Blass, who wanted to try again to make some extra cash on the side. These 4 businesses were invited to design a tasteful option package for the Mark IV, where it should be noted that Lincoln and Cartier already had a partnership. Cartier provided the clocks for the interiors of the Mark series as an option on the Mark III and was standard on the Mark IV. Interesting to note is that Ford already had plans for a designer series edition for Lincoln as far back as 1967, so even way before AMC's designer packages. In that year, Ford had asked Cartier if they would be interested in a Cartier Continental Coupe for the 1970 model year. The package would include leather/cloth/vinyl surfaces and trim, modified dials, and a Cartier jewelry box, as well as golden plating on the steering wheel ornament, dial phase ornaments, keys, C-pillar ornaments, door monograms, and dashboard plaque. But eventually the plans were scrapped, save for the clock. But in 1974, Ford picked up on this theme again, partly thanks to the success of the AMC Designer Series, but also because of a special program related to the promotion of the new Mustang II. The so-called Fashion on Wheels was a program where Ford would team up with Bill Blass to design clothing and accessories that would be sold alongside the new Mustang II. Talking about dressing up a turd. Anyway, back to the Lincolns. Ford designers dared to apply their name. For 1976, the Cartier edition came in a creamy grey paint job as a reference to the pearls used in the jewelry. The Givenchy edition came in sparkling turquoise color as a reference to the Mediterranean Sea. The Pucci edition was given a dark red and grey vinyl top color combination. And the Bill Blass edition was given a deep lustrous blue and cream colored vinyl top. And every edition would receive a personal signature according to the specific designer in the upper window and a 22-karat gold plaque in the interior with either their signature or your own. The Designer Series proved to be a smash hit, and what was intended to extend the longevity of the Mark IV's popularity was carried over to the newly introduced Mark V. A new year, a new mark, and also a new designer's edition with new color combinations. And the designers were not done yet. Even the Mark VI and VII would receive the designer package all the way until the Mark VIII. But of course this wasn't enough for Lincoln. Alongside the Designer Series, Lincoln offered the Luxury Group option packages, which also came in terrific color combinations. And if that wasn't enough for you, you could almost practically custom build your own mark. You'd become your own designer. The list of customization options was almost endless, and you could even have your own name inscripted on the car's badging. These levels of customization were not seen since the coach building era. By the late 70s, the new safety and emission regulations were looming over the American car industry. The CAFE, or Corporate Average Fuel Economy standards, were getting stricter than ever, and the big dinosaurs that once ruled the American roads had to go. Lincoln was very well aware of this and decided to solve the problem by, you guessed it, throw another design package at it. This time not made by a designer, these packages became known as the Collector Series, because investment. They almost literally told the buyer, we're not making any more of these, get them while they're hot. Especially these celebratory editions will go instantly up in value as soon as the production ends. Guaranteed. And guess what? They didn't. You can get a Collector Series Lincoln, which isn't really all that pricier than a standard series. As I said earlier, the Designer Series Lincolns would continue far into the 1980s, but after a couple years many of the designers jumped the ship. Only Bill Blass stuck with Lincoln as far as the 2000s, although the magic by then was almost completely gone. In the meantime, Lincoln also managed to get Versace on board by releasing a Versace edition on the Mark VII. But by the late 80s and the 90s, the Designer Series gaudiness had run its course. The demographic had moved on. Now, it's interesting to note that the Designer Series were pretty much an AMC and Lincoln affair, but other American car makers did not really get into the craze. You'd expect that Lincoln's rival Cadillac would out Lincoln with this type of stuff like they usually do, but none of that. Cadillac refrained from applying designer names to their cars, although Caddy did offer their version of the Lincoln Collector Series in 1978, with the Eldorado Custom Biarritz Classic, to commemorate that this was the last of the big Eldorados before getting downsized a year later. In 1979, you could get a Gucci edition on the Cadillac Seville, with the Gucci pattern all over the interior, like the headrest and the door panels, as well as a Gucci print on the vinyl top, Gucci hood ornament, and complete Gucci handbag set. But it should be noted that this was not carried out by Cadillac, but by a Miami-based third-party company, probably to accommodate the local drug lord population. Today, not a lot of cars are offered with the designer package, if any at all. In the past, there were some attempts, but it remains an obscure thing, since we thankfully left the god-awful gaudy 70s and live in more tasteful times.